It is today in order for us to have enough time for having the budget heard on December 5th.
Okay, so it's a notification date?
No,
Right, so we're gonna do this today. Right. Finish something.
or we can, well, no, we have to have something today
Today you have to present revenue budget.
to have the notification prior to December 5th. But there is modification that can be made between now and then, prior to the adoption. Okay. So, to recap where we are as far as the budget and the budget presentation. We have had a number of meetings in regard to department requests for their budgets as they presented their preliminary budgets and their budgetary meetings. We are looking at what the ending fund balance for 2016 would be in order to take a look at what we have available as funds in 2017. I'll walk through a brief history of where we are to get ourselves to financially where we are currently. And then we'll talk a little about where we are as far as the budget presentation, preliminary budgets, and adjustments that have been made to the preliminary budgets to date. So we started the cash at $8,509,000 at the beginning of the year. We had assigned $1,200,000 as receivable for the Belfair Sewer financing loan, netting us $7,300,000 in cash. This year's adopted budget had $32,768,000 in budgeted revenues, $36,667,000 in budgeted expenditures. We had a June supplemental, which took $101,000, $101,505 out of ending fund balance. We had a September supplemental that took $861,409 out of ending fund balance. And we currently have $193,694 as a supplemental for corrections retro. We have $200,000 as a supplemental request for outsourcing. We have $125,000 for salaries and benefits to the sheriff's office, $25,000 for a fingerprint machine, and $43,307 for juvenile retro CBA payments. That could impact, depending on whether we adopt all of these, the ending fund balance by a negative $587,000. That'll bring our adjusted ending fund balance down to $3 million at the end of the year. We add to that unexpended budget authority and unanticipated budget revenue, bringing our cash up to just under $6 million. From that, we deduct our 13th month expenditures of about $535,000, bringing our ending fund balance to $5,339,000. At a 9% reserve, that's $3,442,000. That nets us an excess above reserve of about $1.9 million. So if we start the year in 2017 with $5,339,000 in cash, we currently have a preliminary budget that we projected $30,105,000 in revenue and $38,022,000 in expenditures.
That's the request.
That's the request, that's preliminary request. That's almost an $8 million difference between revenues and expenditures. That would reduce our ending fund balance to a negative $2,579,000. So in conversations with different departments and in looking at revenue resources, we've identified there are $245,000 available in taking a 1% property tax increase.
How much again?
A 1%, 240.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yep.
On the left, all right.
So that would be for a 1% property tax increase, utilizing bank capacity, as well as the revenue acquired from property taxes on new construction. Yes, the new construction was about 65,000. Bank capacity was about 85,000, and the balance of about 90,000 and 1% tax. Increasing leasehold excise by 15,000, increasing Bureau of Land Management payments in lieu of by 10,000, increasing the sales tax revenue by 225,000. Now, what I'm saying there is increasing sales tax revenue. We projected back in June to reduce our sales tax revenue from where it was in 2016 by $225,000, because sales tax revenues first 2 quarters of the year were slightly below what the expectation was in our budget for 2016. The balance of the year through to date, we have increased the rate of sales tax revenue receiving. We project that we're going to be on track to receive what we budgeted for this year. So both the treasurer and I are in agreement that we should be budgeting next year at the same rate that we budgeted this year. We anticipate it to be flat as far as overall revenue is concerned. So we're increasing the revenue in what was projected in the preliminary. We've received the exact dollar amount of what the city-county assistance is going to be, and we budgeted 50,000 more than we should have. We are increasing the traffic policing diversion from the roads fund by 180,000. We are increasing the pre-UD privilege by 25,000. We found out that a grant that we had projected in the preliminary for the courts is going to be $11,084 less. We did not project for a DEM grant that we did acquire since we budgeted, or since we presented the preliminary, so that's a $95,000 increase. That's a grant that if we increase and receive those funds, we're going to need to increase the expenditures to spend those funds in the budget. So that's part of an increase in expenditures as well. So that's really not revenue that's falling to the bottom line.
Is that the one that we previously had?
Yes, I believe it is. We received the OPD revenue from the state, and it's $5,541 more than what we projected in preliminary. Treasurer has increased investment income of $50,000. I put in a placeholder for increasing Swift and Certain dollars of $91,512, and some minor miscellaneous adjustments of $562 to the negative, which is presenting $880,433 to what was a preliminary budget presentation. Oh, sorry, revenue presentation.
So the increase to traffic diversion, that shows up on our property tax statements.
No, it's a transfer of road dollars out of what would have been collected in the road fund over to current expense. to be used
Still as
as,
a category, I don't know if
I believe it does show up, there's a line item.
there's a line item on your property tax statement.
Correct. But it's not an increase in the tax, it's a reduction of the road.
Reduction of the road, and so that would have all been road otherwise.
Correct.
Okay. It doesn't take a separate vote to do that, except the budget vote.
This is a small diversion, not a levy shift.
Small D, not big D.
Yeah, that's how the revenue department approaches it. It's a small diversion, doesn't need a vote of the, vote of the people. So with the existence of the $7 million shortfall between revenues and expenditures, in lieu of the commissioners going back to the departments and giving them a flat 3%, 4%, 10% rate to cut everybody's budget, an attempt was made to identify those expenditures or those expenditures that might be available to reduce in budgets of the departments. Those were identified and they equaled about $3,608,000. And I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. But that was one way of reducing the preliminary expenditure requests. Since the preliminary, departments have come back to the commission and asked for $240,000 worth of increases in their preliminary budget request. And I gave everybody a copy of that last week. I believe one was put, I may not have put one forward for you, but I have that list for you as well.
So that would
Increase what was the preliminary request.
okay, so instead of 3,608,000, it would offset a portion.
Right, that's an increase to what was asked for in preliminary.
Yeah.
So as a function of the request made to the departments, and this was a short and time-sensitive request, and we put that, had that conversation last Tuesday. I was able to get those requests out to the departments on Thursday, and everybody responded back before the end of the weekend. And I was able to digest what each of the departments had been presented as far as proposed cuts, and what they came back with was a number of issues, a number of questions, a sense of having to want to speak individually, department to the commission, in regards to their budgets and how they are making these modifications. So what I have below this are now what were the dollars that ended up having to not to be cut out of the $3,600,000.
Their request not to cut
Yeah,
it.
correct, to put it back in. And in most cases, there are desires to have additional conversation about those cuts that are proposed to continue to be made from the departments with the commission.
Talk about that for 1 second. Because of our time constraints, is there any issue with us meeting with these folks and making decisions that tomorrow we're going to make decisions right now on some of these?
I would think that they're more involved than a 2-minute conversation now.
Yeah.
That recommendation would be to have conversations tomorrow and maybe have some time set aside for each department to have a short conversation about what their concern is, what their issue is, and how they would like to approach their specific issues. So, based on that, of the requested cuts And these were not across the board, so many percentage points in any one department. It was a subjective review of expenditures that had not been expended, expenditures that had a lot of budget authority still left, expenditures that were budgeted with no dollar costs year-to-date currently expended. So WSU came back and said that they need to add back some of the ER&R reductions that were suggested, so they are increasing, they are adjusting theirs by $2,550. There was an extra help line that was reduced in the clerk's budget that she can't reduce. That brings the adds back to the expenditures $28,900. The commissioner's budget needed to add back medical insurance for the new commissioner. That would be $4,416. The district court added miscellaneous costs of $4,730. The prosecutor's office was unable to make any changes. That adds back $100,900. The Superior Court added back court commissioner and pro temp charges, costs of $11,477. Therapeutic court added back a caseworker of $27,000. There were some miscellaneous additional reductions the treasurer's office was able to come up with.
Let's go back to therapeutic court caseworker. That's not about money anyway. That's not as
Or
Well,
can
it is
be?
current expense money,
Can it be?
but it is covered by mental health dollars, because it's in the therapeutic court under Superior Court.
So do you have that on the revenue side as well right now, or is it not?
It is on the revenue side, so they have about $219,000 worth of revenue coming in. And again, because these were not
Had not been
targeted
expected, I
to any
understand.
department, it was a line item that had costs in it, budget in it, that hadn't been expended. So my recommendation was to cut it. But in this case, it's being covered by mental health tax dollars anyway, so we can't cut that. So adds to the new contract that we've been kind of a placeholder has been $230,000 for the contract corrections new CBA, $98,000 for the alternative sentencing program, $65,000 for the sheriff's office record specialist that would work within the alternative sentencing program, and then within the sheriff's office, additional costs to the alternative sentencing program of $57,260.
Did we ever see that? That came in what time?
This was their budget modification this weekend.
They added money?
Correct.
Added costs?
Well, they didn't add costs. Remember, we took them.
Oh, add that back. Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
that gets
Thanks.
added back.
Thanks.
But do we know what it is?
I do. I have the detail line by line, but it's within their alternative sentencing program. Added back was $375,000 for the purchase of vehicles. Added back was $121,000 for overtime. The salary line for the sheriff's office, $22,641. Additional nursing costs of $210,000. And additional miscellaneous costs of $244,000.
Off of their request, what did they say okay with reducing?
In dollar wise?
Or in stuff either way?
There were some reductions and there were some adds. It was
A wash?
a wash.
So we have no net reduction in the sheriff's office from our request?
Well, the original preliminary had the sheriff's office at oh, I don't have a sub there.
Go ahead.
I don't have that number at my fingertips. And again, this wasn't, in my mind, this wasn't this department gets this much of a deduction, that department gets that much of a deduction. It was more of a, and honestly, when I did that, I eliminated all of the account numbers, and all I looked at were account descriptions. So when I was looking at where we had savings, I wasn't even concerned with which department it was in, as much as how much and why we would be able to cut those costs. So what that did was only to reduce the expenditures by $1,770,000, which, albeit comes to an ending cash balance of almost zero, leaves us negative $20,000, doesn't come close enough to cutting expenditures relative to current revenues. So if we go to the next page, which is then what would our ending fund balance be? So we start flat with $0. We add back unanticipated budget authority and unexpended budget authority and unanticipated budget revenue, bringing us to about $2,330,000 worth of ending fund balance. Taking from that 13th month of $507,000, we end up with about $1,800,000 in ending fund balance. At a 9% reserve, that's about $1,400,000.
So 1.436 to get back to the reserve.
To get to a 9% reserve.
Okay, so. That's new based on,
That's a contract that was ratified after the preliminary budget presentation. So that will need to be added to the preliminary request.
So,
As well as, I'm sorry, as well as the alternative sentencing program was defined after the preliminary request. I'm sorry.
so a couple weeks ago when we looked at this, we were, what, $1.6 million short?
We were 3 million short at one point,
I think I got it.
and then we were down to about $1.6 million.
And now we're at $1.4 million.
Right. Inching our way up.
We're inching. I think I got the document.
So one thing to clarify, one of the things that we also did, Commissioners, is we directed him to put out these requests with the idea that it would bring us to where we needed to be. Some responded back, and thank you for those that did. And I want to recognize that and not make mistakes when it comes to that, and very much appreciate that.
Yeah, there was a large number of departments that were able to accommodate all of them, identifying the fact that it is probably bare bones and will potentially lead to supplemental requests during next year. Again, because these are estimates.
And then there are those that sent everything back to us and said no. So we have to make the decision on the cuts. Which, it was their decision, we wanted to give them the opportunity to make the decision on how best to do it, and we asked them to come back with recommendations. So the ones that put everything in, did they come back to any recommendations on how to cut theirs other than that?
No. They did come back with alternatives, but then some things increased as well.
Yeah, so last time we were 1.38 million out. Now we're 1.43 out. We're going the wrong way.
Well, that's if you put in all the requests. Again, that's not what we were doing, and
Well, a chunk of that, well, some of that has to do with the fact that we're now adding additional supplementals in 2016.
In 2016, and we're adding a little bit more revenue from the sales tax. That's a big chunk.
Correct.
and then the 125 from the storm, is that going here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that 125.
Yeah,
would-
the
and if we
125
had-
placeholder is.
If it ends up not being needed, then that goes back in as well. Explain to me, please, the 239 department expense increases. Have you gone through those as well to see if those are necessary expenditures, or in your opinion?
In my opinion, all of those are new items that have come up since the preliminary budget presentation that are warranted.
And one of the things that I was curious about, I don't know if it makes a difference to the commissioners, was, you know, not knowing what the total dollar amount was, or I can't look it up, but I haven't. Each of the departments was asked to cut, you know, how equal did that look? Because we wanted to avoid across the board cuts. And so, you know, I don't know if that's worth looking at, and then just seeing if it showed a trend of a certain percentage amount. Could it then just be, then, if we want to go ahead and translate that back to an across the board cut?
I don't. I think we've already had them do the work on some of this stuff. I think a lot of it's right here. And, you know, it may not be popular, but let's just throw it out there and see what it says, you know. We already know that we had a discussion that we were not interested in doing the vehicles this year. The money's just not there. So that, you know, put back in, but that's at the request, but we already know we did not want to do that unless something's changed, that we want to expend the $375,000. On the overtime, you know, we need to expect them to do what they had done in the past, overtime and schedule accordingly. There's no way around that. You know, we don't have the extra funds. Anything that we have here disappears in the future or from another department. We got to expect them to stay with the status quo on that, on what they had this last year. As for the healthcare and the nursing, that's another one that we're looking at right there. Okay, that's fine, except for we had less people. We shouldn't have less people that are incarcerated. We shouldn't have a huge increase like that. That may be what they want, but, you know, can we afford to do that? We already had some increases in that over the last few years, even without the people in the jail. That's just on the ones there. And we also have the prosecuting attorney's office that came back. We have to expect some kind of cut in that department also. You know, what it is, I don't know. I understand, it was explained to me this morning, what he had chosen couldn't fly. It just flat couldn't fly.
Right.
Because if it did, he would have had laid people off. The whole idea was to try not to lay
Just to
people
avoid
off
late,
this time.
exactly.
And it was after the prosecuting attorney reviewed it with you, you agreed that we shouldn't do that anyway.
Correct.
At least that's the way it was explained to me, but we still have to look at some type of cut in that department, considering everybody's been cutting things down. Whether or not to look at the alternative sentencing or not, I don't know. You know, we had our discussions on that, and we thought we were doing a cost savings, but it turns out we have the same amount of people, and it costs us, you know, $250,000 more. So we need to talk about that, maybe not today, 220, not the second, but we need to have that discussion, find out how that happened, how is that, we're gonna get less and pay that much more. With those things, I think we also have another $100,000 that we can reach into from the roads and diversion if we need to, because they can expend up to 15 or up to $1.5 million out of that department. They believe they have the ability to utilize that. If we can also bring back in the 125, if we can find that your numbers are correct and we don't, the money is there to transfer that in, that puts that back up another 125. That puts us about $100,000 up. It's a lot to say. And
Can you do traffic policing of $1.5 million?
Yes, easily.
You keep saying easily, so I gotta ask you another question. I don't wanna do this, I'm just gonna ask. So can you do $1.5
We've been tracking, Commissioner, I talked last week about that, 1.6 million for the last
Thank
2
you.
years that we've tracked.
Thank you.
And I did a bunch of, is it okay if I answer a question about alternative sentencing or anything else?
I'm not the chair.
Okay, all right. Well, if you want to ask, I'll let,
I have a
I'll have
question.
to.
It wasn't a question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay,
it was just a decision of whether we wanted to continue.
Okay.
Could we afford to continue?
exactly, but you haven't really,
Because we're not seeing any savings.
okay.
What have we done in our own commissioner's budget? What have we scrubbed in our?
Commissioner's budget is relatively flat, it's basically salaries.
What about?
The commissioner's budget was presented at 345,000, and it's gone up because of medical insurance up to 350,000.
What about associations, travel, or other things?
There's
Yeah, did you get the job? Because I haven't claimed any.
And I never played any travel.
$3,000 in travel.
Okay, we'll scratch that, that should be done. You agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't, this year, also, I didn't claim anything and I have no plans on it, so I pay for everything myself. And Commissioner Jeffries and Commissioner Sheldon do the same.
I've never sent in any reimbursement forms. So what about associations?
Lost that.
That's paid under non-departmental.
Still our budget, I mean, it's-
Wasac, Orca,
Orca, you have.
Work went up a lot. We have to though, right?
Yeah, Orca, you have to pay.
Yeah.
WhatsApp is in non-departmental, probably around 10,000.
10,000 and change, that's still in the budget.
What about the timber thing? Did we ever do anything with the timber part of it? That was another couple of thousand.
no, we never did add the extra cost for timber counties.
No, we never put that.
No, we didn't.
I've never done that. No, I'm just, the reason I asked that question, we're asking everybody else to look at it, I want to make sure we are.
I mean, out of non-departmental, we cut $300,000 in reserves for repairs on the buildings. We do have the ability, and we have scheduled for it, to have some funds out of REIT to do. There are certain types of limited maintenance that can be done using REIT dollars on county buildings.
So, you all listening, you get down to personnel, so last year, added 13 people.
Well, not all in this side, there was two sides of that, 'cause you also had the roads. And since then, you voted to increase 3 more just this last month.
Well, you get down to personnel eventually. I mean,
Well, that's
we're
what we're
going
trying
to
to
get
avoid.
better.
75 to 80% of our budget is.
Yeah.
Right.
So on the cuts that you had requested, or that you had recommended, none of them were personnel, but I know of at least one that came up that it would require personnel cut.
It was identified as extra help.
But also half-time at the prosecutor's office, which is an unfilled position anyway. So
It's a full
nobody would
position.
actually get laid off.
And my position, I'm losing staff.
And-
I'm sorry.
I said I'm losing staff.
One, please.
And I have time position in Hudson.
As an alternative to the recommended cuts that Frank had identified.
But I mean, it has to be staff, I mean, so I have, yeah, it had to be.
Okay, so we got a .5 prosecutor.
It's not a .5, it's a full position.
Well, the thought was that you'd still have the funds for mental health, at least pay
No.
.5 for mental health.
Not to get to $101,000, it's gotta be a full attorney, a position. Yeah.
Okay, so there's going to be personnel cut.
Not, well, maybe not, it depends on how this thing is set up still. Again, if we look at putting in most of the things that were taken out that they've chosen not to.
So it's 51% of the total.
You know,
It's 57% if you take Johnson out.
that brought us up to 1.1. Vehicles, overtime. miscellaneous costs.
Two, three.
That's 5, 6, 7, 8. Plus 124.
Doesn't get us there.
Maybe you gotta go back and think about some of the things that we did when we had the recession. You know, we never came out of it, but what did we do? We had, we reduced some time in some offices, sometimes that we weren't open. So Diane, nobody's around anymore. What else do we do, Diane?
Well, let's look at this, let's just look at the pieces that are down here at the bottom that the sheriff wanted to add back in. It comes up to $972,492. That's before we even hit out there to sentencing. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. Or 5 of these lines. Let's track that by.
Yeah, is that departmental part of it? Yeah, go ahead. So that, plus,
Plus 120 in traffic diversion, that comes to $1,092,000. So you're increasing revenues and reducing
How much
costs.
more?
120,000 to bring it to $1,500,000.
okay. Just going backwards, so what did you have? You had 975,
242.
972.
Plus 120.
Well, you wouldn't be plus on that because you're,
Yeah, I'm increasing revenues.
oh, so you're putting a plus on that, okay.
Yeah.
And then, if you're right on the 125, then that's gonna change that also. But if you're wrong, then that has to come back out again.
Mhm. That's $1,217,000.
Well, you're finding it, but you're only finding it in the sheriff's budget.
Well, the sheriff's budget is one that came back with the reply of they want everything back.
I think there's others.
Well, we haven't gotten to that part, there's still more to discuss. We're just hitting.
The other thing, you know, what you're doing too is, on the revenue side, is you're asking for the 1%, which you didn't do last year.
We have to do it this year.
As well as paying.
Yeah.
Paying more.
So we're gonna have to make a case that this is a, what's the term?
Substantial need.
Substantial
I think we
need.
can.
Well, I just got the election returns, and it looks like the property tax increase for parks, we got 35%.
But this isn't about getting reelected or elected.
Well, I didn't say it was.
Me.
I didn't bring that up. All I said was, people didn't vote for a property tax increase. Substantially, it isn't. So if you could find a way to do it without a property tax increase, you probably feel more acceptance from the public. Because they're not in the room.
$185,000 with additional cuts.
No, and like I said, I'm just throwing this stuff out there. There's another 100,000 that's possible then if they say they can absorb 6. If they can absorb 1.6 instead of 1.5. Right now, I recommend that if we do the one extra 1.5, that we take it out of that road commission fund.
So that would change the 180 to how much?
300.
And the roads wouldn't be impacted, come out of that other fund, so. Unless we can find some more.
Kathy Riley here.
Jennifer? She retired.
Wrong Riley.
Ron Riley. Okay, because that's going to have an impact on their budget too.
You signed,
Well,
you
that-
set those dollars
yeah, that
aside.
would-
Those were for those economic roads.
Oh,
development.
yeah, that would have no impact on their.
That's just
bottom line.
reducing a reserve on the.
Okay.
Unless we wanted to talk about that and do another problem. Okay. haven't had a chance, we should sit down with the prosecuting attorney tomorrow and talk about what percentage or what amount they can absorb as well. Because, you know, they're gonna have to, like the rest of everybody, gonna have to do something in there. We've got to figure out what it is, and we'll talk to them about it if you guys were able to meet with them tomorrow, because we don't have it scheduled at this point.
Yeah, I'd have to skip something I was gonna do. But I can make myself available.
And I will also. need to
Actually,
do
it would
that.
be helpful if it was scheduled at 1 o'clock.
You know, we haven't talked about across the board cuts, but, you know, again, what you've talked about here is really hits the sheriff's office, but what if you took a small percentage across all the departments?
Actually, this doesn't, it hits the sheriff's office for what they're requesting, not, it was a positive, they get more this year than they would have last year. It's still an increase, just not the increase they'd like to have. But, you know, we went over those numbers yesterday or so, that, or the day before yesterday, but that didn't include some of this stuff, so. And I don't know what you had included in your other. So tomorrow, 1 o'clock, I can do that. 1 o'clock.
So, okay, so what we're gonna be doing is meeting with who? If they're available, but there's the other question.
I think the sheriff's office, if they're available.
Sure.
The prosecuting attorney's office, are you available?
Yes, sir.
You think the judge wanted to meet with us? No? Yeah.
We at 0, it's
The
already
judge?
changed afternoon. It's a different meeting. No.
District Court, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's what I think.
I think it's eyes on the back of my head.
And how much time will it take to depend on them? On what they need, but try to get you out of here as soon as.
I've got graduation in the academy tomorrow. I'm scheduled to be there.
Do we need to talk to the clerk's office?
I think that's.
I can answer the question really quickly.
Okay.
That position has been held by the same person since 2011.
Yeah.
It got removed, sort of in error. So when the auditor's office, O&M funds paid for it last year, they can't pay for it this year. She came back into my budget, but she's been in the budget, in my budget since 2011 otherwise.
And Frank
So,
explained to me it was a
okay.
mistake also, that
Yeah.
it shouldn't have been in there. It's
Yeah.
just one of those ones that, when you're trying to put together formulas to make things happen.
Right.
got it.
That's exactly right. So if you need to talk to me, I'm happy to make myself available, but if you don't, that's the only thing I have. That's the only issue.
Right now, at this moment, I know.
And then it's either clerk, commissioner.
That was a similar thing. It was a mistake on Frank's part in the math.
But remember, he took away, you know, even the headings of what these things were, just look for the not expended. It wasn't supposed to be perfect, that's why we sent it out to everybody to give them everybody make their
But you weren't
recommendation.
able to find them, they're looking at
That's
that.
exactly what
Not in our personnel, no.
No, it doesn't have to
Because
be
they
personnel.
did have other cuts. They did have other cuts.
We were cut 9%.
And those were the ones that they couldn't.
That had to come back in, okay? And we'll talk about ourselves, and stuff like that. Individually.
So that still leaves us a $220,000 hole, assuming the $125,000 does not materialize.
Meaning that there would
Okay.
be a supplemental.
Correct, it will not need to be 125. That's
Well,
assuming
I'll be
that.
honest with you, that's our alternative sentencing program. Is what that equals to.
Well, let's have that conversation specifically with them tomorrow. Because I'd like to, I'm still not sure what we're getting, what we're not on that. And our numbers, we've come to the conclusion on our own that they're not seeing the benefit for the bottom line. I'd like to hear from them before we can change.
Well, let's make that request. So tomorrow,
Yeah.
would the sheriff's office be available?
They already,
What time?
they already said.
Will be?
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, you know, is there any cost reductions that would result out of the alternative sentencing program implementation? Could you bring that information forward? That would be great.
Can I make one other request? If you, if the sheriff's department sees other alternatives that they, and the prosecuting attorney's office sees other alternatives they can bring in to offset some of these things they think are more important, I hope that you will bring that as well tomorrow to tell us, so that we can try to offset the things that you think are the most important for what you need. Because we don't want, there's gotta be, on your department's a little different, because yours is already back in, but there's gotta be some kind of compass, we have to figure out something, whether you come to us with what you think we can do, rather than us try to do something off the top of our heads, and that doesn't benefit anybody.
But we have an operations budget that hasn't increased in a decade, and we were asked to cut 60% of it.
No,
And I can't do that.
I'm not going off, I'm not asking.
Right, I'm just saying, that
Yeah.
number,
Yeah, let's just look at what other.
the only thing that can be that number is a position, that's,
And it may not have to be that number at all.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
just saying, let's have the conversation and see what there is.
Anything else? Well, okay, so here's the question, so we have to have this budget.
Well, I have a budget as it stands currently. So that can be presented and put on the website, on the web today.
Okay.
It won't balance, but it'll be out.
Correct.
Oh, this is the balance vote, is it, with the proposed cuts?
No, currently the budget is not balanced.
Okay.
So we put it out there and we got work to do.
What
tomorrow.
percentage are we off?
3.96.
96.
3.96.
Yeah, to 6.
Magic's over 4% out of balance.
Well, on that, but what we're looking at here, we're about 100.
Well, if we make these changes, we're about less than half
That's
percent.
that's what I figured.
Okay, does anybody want to come forward? Go forward, or?
We're gonna be meeting tomorrow, I say we just
Okay.
So 1 o'clock?
set up, Diane, can you please call and set up which ones at which time?
You want time, I just want to run them through, because I don't know how long they might take.
Yeah, I don't either, but they'll know which times they can show up though.
Or whether, if you want to sit down with us tomorrow, you can call Diane. And then she'll try to make a schedule for it.
And I myself, we have nothing else after this, right?
Correct.
I've got about an hour if somebody wants to, yell at me individually, I'm good with that too. It is what it
Commissioner,
is.
just, I'll have a representative there, but I was pre-scheduled for 3 months ago to be at the academy tomorrow for somebody's graduating, so it'll be someone from the office.
That starts tomorrow at 1 o'clock, right?
Yeah, I think Diane, I think it'd be better if people called you. Is that okay?
Sure.
That way, she'll not try to figure out everybody's schedule, you can talk about what your schedule is.
I also want you to consider whether or not we want to put a thing in there anywhere for we've sold property right now for the last several years.
I understand why they can't go another levy shift.
Yes.
Question to ask.
We still have,
One year it was.
we had 1 or 2 big parcels, but most of them were 4,000, 2,000,
I remember I saw a number of them.
So what you've been talking about is around the transfer station.
Yeah, that, and
Well,
also,
and-
and also the, we had the 90 acres that we, took a request or never put. Other stuff, I'm just asking to keep it in
Yeah,
mind.
but we can't put that, I don't know how you put that in the budget.
Well, for the reserve, put it on the market and sell it, just expectation.
Commissioner, has there been another consideration for levy shift? We haven't talked about that yet either, that's another alternative.
Yeah, so I know Commissioner Netherland and I spoke about it. I don't know if you were at that meeting, but I opposed to a levy shift specifically for this year because the SPI new mill will come online. And it'll be added assessed value that will be then assessed at a lower rate and the city would lose significantly more money.
well, it wouldn't be assessed at a lower rate, they would be incapable of taxing that portion of their new construction increase forever.
It just, it
They
would
would
have
lose taxing base.
Commissioner Sheldon was not here, he had already left when.
It would have a substantial negative impact on the city, and I just can't go conscious support that.
The prior year, the new construction costs were very, very minimal. And the impact was, I think, $75 of lost tax revenue to the city forever. And so we ended up paying them $7,500 so that they would be able to offset the loss of $75 at 1% a year forever.
I remember we paid.
But it's much, much more this year because of SBI, and it'll be the same compounded next year. 'Cause that's where the bigger dollars come in.
I think I know the answer, but I gotta ask you anyway, Commissioner, where are you on that?
Oh, I wouldn't do it, but I think they're gonna cut their first board before the end of the year,
Yeah, December,
so,
This year?
yeah,
this year.
that's what they told me.
I'm gonna meet with them next week, but that's what they told me on the phone, they're trying to do. Because you get, if they do that, they get a big depreciation,
Sure, because it's operating.
because it's operating, an operating mill in
Yeah.
That's good business.
2016.
Okay.
Okay, so I will publish this as it is currently, and we will talk about the three budgets next tomorrow.
And don't we have to certify tomorrow?
We have the levy certification on the agenda for tomorrow, and it will ask for, it'll have a number of options. There's 6 options.
Spend $1 million
Whether you want to take
staffing.
1%, whether you want to take,
Still the only county in the state
you want to bank the 1%, some overall details, but yes. Now, we don't have to certify tomorrow. We haven't certified prior to the November 30th deadline in, I don't know, how many years?
We did last year.
Um,
Last year we were on time.
I think we made a concerted effort to, but the timing was a little different, to be on certified before November 30th. Department of Revenue's recommendation.
But if we don't certify tomorrow, we've got a lot of taxing districts kind of waiting.
We can't certify theirs because we don't have their numbers yet. So they're not going to get certified until December
February 6th, we should have them all.
6th or so at the earliest.
We only got a few of them so far.
Correct. So the only ones that would be certified are the counties and roads. And the question there would be, do we want to take the 1%? Do we want to take the, up to the implicit deflator amount? Because it's below 1%. If we take the 1%, we need to do a substantial need document.
On the roads, do you know if they put it in their budget to 1%?
They have not put in the budget their 1%.
We may have to have that conversation. You know, anything we set up this year, let's just be real straight about this, guys. Whatever we put together this year, we do it by the skin of our teeth. We end up in the same place we were last year, but the difference is the bow wave is huge. Okay, so what happens is if anything comes in for supplementals during the year, you're gonna have to find a way to cut it in your budget in the long run, most likely. So if you wanna come to us for 200,000 for supplemental, you're gonna have to cut it out of your budget. That's unless we can find a way to bring in more revenue during the year. And even that other, the 3.7 is unexpected to come in till next year, the year after next, on the GUI duct or anything like that, so there's no reprieve there
It's
for
not-
extra cash. Yeah, can't count
I don't
anything.
think, we won't get that much even in 2018.
The
That's
whole
not
idea-
what the projection is anyway.
The whole idea is to try and keep from laying people off, that's the whole this year.
No. I think the public has a different thing. They see themselves cutting back, and we're just growing. The county government's growing.
Have we adjourned, Madam Chair?
We are adjourned.